Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good everything, everybody. It's beautiful Monday and it's time for Focus on Australia. So happy to have you guys here again. Beautiful Gabbi. You and I have seen quite a bit of each other the last few days, which has been super fun. I've enjoyed that, I have to say. And then we have with us an overcomer, Ash, who has amazing story to tell from Australia as well. And I really look forward to hearing about your journey again on what we will call child transportation and exposing the underbelly of Down Under. Please note that we can't be naming names and anything like that. So in the comments and things, just be aware of that. We have to be very careful. And we appreciate our overcomers who step forward and tell their stories, and completely respect that there's certain things they can't talk about and certain people won't name names and can't name names for, I think, obvious reasons, although each one of theirs varies. So I'm very grateful to have you, Ash. Welcome. And of course, hello, beautiful Gabbi. How are you?
Hi again. Thanks for having us, as always.
Oh, my pleasure. Are we lagging?
A little bit, yeah. I'm so excited for Ash to tell the story today because it's such a great example of how structured and organized these transportation rings are in Australia and all over the world, and how it involves so many different institutions, many of which to the public we would perceive them as systems that are actually built to protect our children and protect our people. And it's going to be a shocking story for a lot of people to hear, just to actually understand how inverted so many of these systems are and how hidden this is from all of us. So thank you so much for joining us, Ash. Would you like to start just to give us a bit of a background? Because I know you were caught up in this ring through family, which is such a common occurrence for survivors and for children to be born into circumstances that are beyond your control and really be sort of exposed to a very organized network.
Yeah. So I was born in Brisbane and grew up in Brisbane in a leafy little suburb called Tarragindi. And I'm the eldest of four. I was born when my father was 20 and my mother was 18. And my earliest memories are of being sexually abused. Before I had the capacity to formulate visual memory, I remember the feeling, the sounds, the scents, the smells, and all of the senses being engaged of being abused. This is something that continued for my entire childhood. So my father is a sexually sadistic psychopath and a pedophile, and also a serial killer who has never been caught. So as you can understand, that was a very challenging and difficult childhood. And I began being sexually abused and tortured from a very, very young age. My first introduction to trafficking is not what I would call sort of like institutionalized trafficking, but I was just sold for sex to a local man when I was 2.5 years of age. And that was my first experience of being trafficked. This was done through a local Chinese restaurant. And that first trafficking experience was at the owner's mother's house that was just around the corner from the place. So I remember rocking up, and there was a man there. He was fairly well dressed. He was in his mid-50s to mid-60s. And he had a present for me. He had a doll. So he gave me this doll, and we went into the house, and he proceeded to do a number of things to me. He was very kind. He was very sweet. And he, asked, is this okay? Is this okay? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? that was my first experience. I went home. I was very happy. I was dancing around the house. I was singing, because for me,
Yeah.
that was something that was so shocking to me, that somebody could sexually abuse me, give me a gift, and be kind to me. And it was just something that I hadn't experienced before. My
Wow.
father, seeing that I was happy after the experience, went into a rage, proceeded to start yelling and carrying on around the house, making a number of threats against this man. Because normally punitive measures were doled out on me, and that was the only way in which I was sexually abused. That only happened 3 more times, and because of the positive effect that it had in my life and the stage in development that I was, I'm a super positive person, and any little bit of kindness, it's very easy for me to take that kindness and run with it. The saying, give a man enough rope and he'll hang himself, but the complete opposite of that is what I do in life. So give me a little bit of inch of kindness and I will extend that kindness and take so much positivity from it. And that's certainly what I did in this situation. So from there, my father, still to do with this, what I would call very, very low ball Chinese organized crime, took me to a nightclub in Fortitude Valley. And downstairs in this club, they've got, this is at 3 years of age. Downstairs at this club, they've got pool tables, a boxing ring, and they do a lot of like illegal low ball gambling there. And part of what they did was they would place bets on various things, including in my situation, I was put into a boxing ring with another little boy, and we were given gloves and helmets, and we had to just punch each other. And people placed bets on how that would go. And then after that, some systematic abuse from a number of people occurred, in which they paid for that. They paid to rape me. But due to the fact that I was not super wanting to engage in hurting this other child, you know, I kicked and hit the kid, but I wouldn't punch him in the face. I'm very against violence. I have been from a young age. So there's certain things that I refuse to do. And, you know, they didn't really like that. It was something that was kind of inconvenient to them, and they didn't have the time nor the skills to punitively enact measures that would force me to do what they wanted me to do. It was sort of a bit of a waste of their time because this wasn't a super organized trafficking operation. That, alongside a number of other comments from my father that were racist, and they basically kicked him out of the club, and they said, you know, we're not bothering with this, it's a waste of our time. So then my father had to take me somewhere else. In the meantime, at home, I was becoming more and more resistant to the rapes and the sexual abuse. So I was 3 years of age.
Can I just ask you, sorry, Ash,
Yes.
you say you're the eldest of 4. Were
Correct.
you the only one of your siblings? I mean, it's from what I'm hearing, you must be about 4 or 5 years old now, right? When this is going on.
No, I was 2.5 in that first experience. I was 3 when I was involved in the Chinese nightclub, and I'm still 3 at the time that we're at this point in the story. So I'm the only sibling that's alive at this point. So, and this is important to the story. So my father really wanted to convince me that the abuse was okay, that, you know, sex between an adult and a child was acceptable. He wanted to keep me quiet. He didn't want me talking to people because it was pretty obvious that I was an extrovert that was going to have a chat to any and everybody that I met. And I was showing signs of that from a young age, and I'm still very much like that today. So he needed to clamp down on that and clamp down on my big mouth, which I still have. And so over a period of 3 days, he subjected me to 3 days worth of intermittent torture, sexual abuse, raping, psychological abuse, just trying to force this sort of ideology that it was okay. And at the end of that period of time, I refused to accept that it was okay.
Wow.
That's not a particularly common kind of probably experience of a young abuse survivor. I think most children will probably just accept, due to the sheer trauma of the situation, that sex between an adult and a child is acceptable in that situation, being only 3 years of age. I, however,
I
didn't.
have
So
to
my father
ask
was
you,
in,
sorry, I have to
Yeah.
ask you at this point, where
Yes.
is your mum?
My mom, I mean, she didn't witness the abuse when I was that young. She was like out of the house when it was happening.
Was she party to it? Did she know it was going on?
No, not in the beginning. No, not in the beginning. And she lived just around the corner from like her parents' house, because she was like a really young mom. So she would go around to her parents' house all the time. She had a job. She had other things to be doing as well. So she didn't know it was going on until, I believe, later on.
So your dad was supposedly taking care of you while your mum was working, and obviously being 18 years or 19 years old, that's a very young mum, and
Yes.
obviously oblivious to the dangers of these predators.
Oh, I don't
Wow.
think anybody expects that they're going to marry a sexually sadistic, psychopathic pedophile who's a serial killer, particularly
Sure.
somebody that's fairly intelligent. At the time, my father was studying law, working at a kid's toy store, kind of a suave kind of a guy, you know, rode a motorbike, that kind of thing. So, you know, she didn't have a clue. And she was just happy to be a young mum. So she didn't, this is a first time experience for her. She didn't really know what to expect. So at the end of this, this period of time, these 3 days, I refused to accept that sex between adult and child was acceptable. My father cracked the shits again. I mean, I was kind of a person that always put my father into an extreme rage, whether intentional or by accident. And he said to me, well, I'm going to have another child because you're not normal and somebody else is going to be more submissive to the abuse. And when my sister was born, I found out that that was very much true. I learnt that I was very different and that I don't know, genetically, I just must have had something within me that was different. But the abuse didn't stop, of course. He's not going to take the opportunity to not stop the abuse. It's just that the punitive measures became more extreme in an effort to bend my will into submission. Moving on. This is still before my sister was born. So when I was 3.5 years of age, I was introduced for the first time into institutionalized government-funded child trafficking. And I was taken from my house to a prominent, fairly well-known Brisbane business. This business was a front for a mid-tier child trafficking operation. So basically the operation is set up like this. They have that fairly large plot of land in an inner city suburb in Brisbane. They're still operating today. And we'll touch more on why they're still operating today a bit later on. There's a house where the women were kept to be trafficked and have unregistered births of children to be put into trafficking. So if you have an unregistered birth, it means you can have an unregistered death, and it means none of that's logged in the system and nobody ever knows about it. There is then directly next to that, a building with a very small doorway with barred doors and a set of steps that lead up to it directly from the footpath. Inside those barred doors, which the public can see, they can still see that today, there sits a mannequin with makeup on. And basically what happened was I was brought to the business by car. I had a black piece of fabric over my head and I was pushed through that door and I walked up those steps at 3.5 years of age and was put into a room, and I met the owner operator of the business and his 2 sons. They proceeded to strip me down and assess me and put me in a state of fear, as is generally done in trafficking. What we have in trafficking is we have a little taster. We have the entree, we got the main, and we got the dessert. That's how these things operate. So when a child first goes in, there's kind of the entree, and a child is assessed, they're stripped down, they're looked at, they're scared, they're made sure that they will cave into submission. So that was what happened when I was brought in there. From there, I was taken out across. So the business at the time, it had like inside the business doors, there was like sand and dirt because it's kind of like an industrial set of buildings and it's an industrial based business without giving more away. And there's quite a large setup of industrial warehouses side by side. And what happened was children are put in each of these industrial kind of warehouse style rooms, if you will. It's fairly rudimentary, and tied up and systematically raped. So yeah, a lot of horrific and awful things happened behind closed doors of this business. I saw women and children murdered. I was raped many times by people that are fairly well known in the community and in local politics. And I went there on many, many occasions. And, you know, it wasn't always the same. Oftentimes I would go there in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 a.m. This is a great time. Everybody's asleep in the community and they can do whatever they want. However, if a child is going to be really loud and they're going to be causing trouble, at the end of this day, this business is operating on a street. So how do they get rid of the noise associated with that? Well, they had a circular saw that they would get going, and they just turn that saw on and they would run it. They would get the dogs barking, and that would drown out the cries of any children if they made any sounds. Yeah. So to detail,
honestly, I just
sorry,
want to say this. I just want to say at this point, I've never heard anyone explain how that works, the actual process, as you say, that you know, the system of child trafficking. It just brings, I remember not too long ago, I speak to someone who's been in Africa and in the mines, who told me that our children are literally trafficked, auctioned, and kept in the mine shafts. That to me was something so shocking.
Yes.
And what you're telling me now, and just the detail you're giving us, is very shocking to me, because it's bringing in a deeper reality. You know, when we hear the word child trafficking, or it's just become such a normal word, right? In our vocabulary, in our tribes around here, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But now when you speak about this and you actually breaking it down, my God, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I just, again, you know, I just want to say, I don't know how people like yourself get out of those situations and come out of it smiling and glowing the way that you are. And it takes a very strong soul to go through that. Yeah. And I know, you know, what you've been through is not in vain. And honestly, I don't know, I just feel I want to say that to you. It's just very heartbreaking.
I really truly appreciate your words, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. That means a lot. Thank you.
Sure, carry on.
Yes, so this is only the beginning, unfortunately, sure. Because I'm so young. So one incident that I would like to detail that really stood out to me occurred. Okay, there's 2 incidents that I will talk about in this business that really stood out to me. That give an overall picture of part of how this operation is run. So one such occasion, I was taken to the business. This was on a Saturday, and it was during the afternoon, and I had a day of, you know, just being raped by, you know, person after person after person. It's mostly men. Occasionally there's women involved. Predominantly female children are like more likely to be victims, but males are still always involved as well, of course. But female victims are preferred by both male and female perpetrators overall. That's just been my experience, in my opinion. And obviously the trafficking operation is very misogynistic in nature. That's why we have these misogynistic systems in place. And it all really goes back to these reasons. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off the point and I apologize. So this particular day, I got raped by a number of perpetrators. As you do in trafficking, you will, subjected, put in one of the industrial rooms, tied up, tortured, raped, subjected to a lot of horrific things, which aren't necessarily to detail. It's whatever a person's personal kink is, and they can do whatever they want, really. But at the end of the day, I wasn't being killed. So I'm very fortunate and very lucky. And I knew that I wasn't going to be killed. So depending on each perpetrator, from a very young age, I learned to read people well, because for me, my nature, I'm not going to just sit back and allow someone to rape me unless there is like a 99% risk that I could get killed. I'm going to be the biggest son of a bitch you've ever encountered. And I've been like this since a young age. So a lot of the time I just had things over my mouth so I couldn't talk because I was very, very annoying. Yeah, depending on the perpetrator, you can alter your behavior so that you can get the best outcome. And so a lot of survivors in these situations will be very submissive. They will say the things that the perpetrator wants them to say. And what this does is it results in them being hurt less. They're subjected to less torture, and less time in general is spent with them per perpetrator. So it just keeps them safe. I'm not like that. I'll just draw this situation out and make sure you remember that nightmare child, which was really annoying. But it depends on the perpetrator. So there's some people that are very mentally unstable. They've got impulse control issues and they may kill you in a rage. These are not the kind of perpetrators that you want to be doing this dance with. But if you know that you're 100% not going to be killed, well, you may as well just give them a nightmare time. And that was my opinion. And I did that because for me, it all comes down to morals and ethics. At the end of the day, no matter how much I was dehumanized and told that it was my fault, told that I was a slut, etc., it wasn't my fault. And I knew that from a very young age. And I always wanted to remind those perpetrators that they were in the wrong. And at the end of the day, I learnt so much about psychopathy and pedophilia and the whole spectrum of perpetrators. And as a result of that, I learnt that, sexually sadistic psychopaths do not have the capacity for joy and love and human connection and happiness. And all of the things that make us human, that make us feel alive. We go to a beach and we see a beautiful sunset. This is what brings value and joy to our life. They don't have that ability. So ultimately, I was able to develop a sense of compassion, detached compassion for these perpetrators, because what's the point of what you're doing? And I tried to remind them of that. And that was very important to me. And it created, a mental separation. And it allowed me to cope with the abuse better. And that's probably why I haven't been so negatively affected long-term by the trafficking as other survivors. And I don't believe that's down to some genius strategy that I came up with. I think it's just down to genetics. And sometimes you get born with, really resilient genetics. And sometimes you're born with a positive spirit. And that's just luck. It doesn't mean that I'm better than anybody else. It's just the way that I am.
I've got a question for you here, because from what I'm hearing you say as the sassy fast, which I can quite picture, by the way, giving these pedos a really hard time. Did you ever, in your cheekiness, did you ever manage to converse with any of them? I mean, what you're saying is you reminded them that they were doing what they were doing was bad or wrong. And what was their response? So can you maybe just share something, maybe a situation you recall?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I got to know a lot of my perpetrators, especially my regular perpetrators. And, I like to direct conversation to their hobbies and interests, what gave their life meaning apart from sex, rape, and torturing children. And for me, that was an important part of our dialogue. One particular perpetrator, he's a huge fan of boats, the ocean, and yachts. So we would often talk about that, and I would allow him to talk about, you know, his hobbies and his passions to do with that. And it brought him a sense of fulfillment. And he was able to share that with me, and we built kind of a connection. I had no interest in really what he had to say, but it was important because for me, reminding him that he did have worth, that he could do other things and other pursuits other than these depraved acts was important to me, because I don't see every perpetrator as being this sick, evil, demented person. You know, there are many that are like that. But again, there is this scale. And so I always have hope, and I have compassion, and I believe the best in people. And I always hope that people can change their lives, and that they can make better choices and potentially have a better outcome. Whether or not that's true remains to be seen. And particularly if they're in the cabal, well, you know, that it allows them to indulge in their deepest, darkest fantasies and get lost in that. But again, from an ethical perspective, I am against that, because it's ultimately not helpful for the community. And I don't believe that it brings them an internal sense of fulfillment. And I believe that they are better than that, than what they are doing. Yeah, that's just a little bit.
That's beautiful. Very wise. Yeah, absolutely.
So courageous that in such a situation of threat and fear that you found that strength within you. And I think that is just testimony to your determination and the strength of soul that you are, Ash. You're an incredible woman.
I would love to actually interview you on our solutions channel, Gabs, just speaking, because, you know, the solutions is where and the reason I say that now is because I know we want to move on to other stuff, but I'd love to talk to you in terms of the healing and on our solutions channel about that. So please, let's connect about that, because I think that is such a beautiful message to share, especially at these times that so many people are starting to blow the whistle. Anyway, I know you've got a lot to share. I don't want to divert.
Okay. I will say something as well on that point. I do also have my own personal beliefs that would be good as well to have the opportunity to share regarding perpetrators and regarding pedophilia and my approach to that. And I think that'd be great. And it's one that's focused on hope, and I think that'd be great for the show. But anyway, moving on. So I tend to get really sidetracked, so I apologize. So back to one of the very particular incidents. I was getting subjected to rape for hours and hours from a number of perpetrators. And then I got to have a break. So I would just walk around and have a look at the various things within the business when I got to have a break. You know, maybe 8 to 15 rapes, you get to have a break and a rest. And, you know, I'd go around and have a chat to people, suss out what was going on, maybe chat to the dogs, that kind of thing. Anyway, I saw a young mum and a child who was about 7 years of age, a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. And they were just brought in through the front gates of this business. This business has big towering gates that you can't see through. And I didn't really know why they were there, because various people came into the business. Sometimes people, genuine customers, came in.
So it was actually a business as well as the front.
Yeah. It's crazy. But I mean, they've got to, you know, get tax and everything and maintain an image ultimately. So anyway, this young mum was really, really excited, and she was talking about this business opportunity, and she was speaking to the two brothers, and she was saying, oh, sorry, the two brothers are the sons of the owner of the business, and these are the three main perpetrators and operators of the operation, just to be clear. So she was saying, oh, thank you so much. You know, I was in such a terrible situation. And she made it very clear that she'd basically been in a domestic violence situation. I was under the impression that they'd offered her a safe haven and a job. That's why her and her daughter had stepped through those doors. And as soon as I heard that, I was immediately, like, the brothers saw my face, that I was just hanging around, and they quickly got rid of me because they knew what I was like, and I was going to tell her to run.
Get out of there.
I had time to do that, I was quickly removed, and she was taken away into an area near the trafficking house. I don't know what she was up to in there, but the child was taken and put in one of the industrial buildings with me, beside me. And basically the two bros, what they would do is, in a general rule of thumb, them personally, they would have a set of tools lined up, and they would torture devices, I guess. And they would just go through, they'd be in a good mood, they'd do some drugs, they'd get high. And we were, you know, tied up and subjected to all kind of horrific torture acts. Anyway, they would go between us. So they're completely comfortable being naked in front of each other. It's just freaking weird. But anyway, that's just a side note. So they're going from child to child, swapping me and this other little girl. And I started to get really worried, because there was like, they just had, sometimes when sexually sadistic psychopaths get a certain look in their eye, you know that they are going to kill somebody. And I started getting really concerned and really distressed. And just out of nowhere, one of the brothers went to his tools, and he turned back around very quickly, too quickly. He wasn't calm anymore. He was in a rage, and he just proceeded to smash this little girl in the face, start slashing her in the face. And she, in turn, started to exhibit extreme pain, more than she had been showing before. And the gag that was in her mouth was taken out and was ripped out, and she started to cry. And then that was when he just got a knife and just slashed her throat. And I'll never forget the sound of her cry being cut short. And that was it. She'd been killed. And yeah, she just dropped. And that really, really affected me for a long time. It affects me for the rest of my life. Every child that I saw killed, it takes a piece of your soul, and it's just a part of you that you can never get back. It's just heartbreaking.
Just to know that evil exists to hurt a child as well, you know, like that's just so deeply shocking to witness that as a child yourself, to actually see that evil exists in the world. Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty bloody awful. And yeah, then the mother was brought out, and she didn't know any of this had been going on, I don't think. And she saw from a distance, but they held her back, her child dead on the ground. And she just started screaming. It's just like when a mother sees their child has been killed and they can't even go to them and just hold them in that moment, it's just sick. And then she was just shot in the head, done. And then the floor was cleaned. You know, they have the huge cleanup chemicals. They spray the floors. They're all concrete floors. And both bodies were loaded onto the back. This was around late afternoon. And by dusk evening, those two bodies were just taken out on the back of a ute, on the back of a ute. And I just never saw them again. So that's just one incident, but it shows that there's a number of ways in which people can be involved in trafficking. So people can be involved in trafficking the way that I was, and that was just through a parent. They can also be brought into trafficking in that situation. They're just manipulated and tricked. And there was no need to state that reason to bring her into trafficking in that way. And I believe they intentionally did that to make the death more shocking for her and more traumatic for her, by saying that they were going to provide a safe haven for her and her daughter. And that's just, you know, I know that's not like probably a massive issue, but just for me, it just really speaks to the level of, at every level, they're trying
it's the ultimate betrayal. It's the ultimate betrayal.
More punitive measures than the ultimate betrayal, on purpose, specifically and intentionally. And then, of course, the vast majority of kids are brought into trafficking through the Department of Child Safety. And I didn't actually know that at this point, but I learned that much later. So I spent a lot of time in trafficking. I spent over a decade in trafficking. And for this reason, I learned so much because I talk to everybody as well. You know, every event that I go to, every party that I go to, I chat to the kids, I chat to the perpetrators, I chat to everybody, and I learned a lot. Another incident that stood out to me at this operation occurred when I was 4. And this was actually like, this one was pretty bad as well. I was brought in the typical way in the middle of the night. But I was put, when I went up those initial steps, there was already 3 other kids in there. And the brothers, they were kind of had part of their kink. They were into like forcing kids to like eat insects, be covered in like animals, that kind of thing. I don't know why they're into it anyway. It's just stupid. I always told them it was idiotic, but anyway, they continued it. So they just basically put a whole bunch of cockroaches on us. And we're screaming, freaking out. And, you know, again, this is the entree. They're getting us prepared. They're getting us.
They're in control. Yeah.
Exactly. Trying to get us into submission. We were then moved into a room.
This is horrific. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah. Sorry. It's got to be said.
No, I so appreciate that you do. Please don't take my squirming as a sign to stop. Not at all.
I'm just saying I apologize that like it is so upsetting and it is so disgusting.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, this is knowledge that it's the graphic detail of the stuff that we know is going on, but we don't know what happens. I mean, the horrors, we actually know, it's, you know, the way I'm seeing it, it's like coming from an individual speaking specifically around that, and you speak very succinctly, so you've got a great understanding, which is great because you narrate your story very well.
Cool, thank you. So we were taken to an area that they called the pen, and the pen is where they put the dogs when they wanted the dogs to be in the industrial like warehouse / workshop, because there's like a workshop going on there. And that's where they got the saw going, the circular saw going. It was already going. And that's whenever I hear that saw, whenever I even walk past that business and I still hear that saw, I just know. It's not just triggering. It's like, you know, I get triggered every day by everything. But it's like, what's happening? Do you know what I mean?
What are they hiding?
Yeah, exactly. So we're put in the pen, and all of these kids are really, really little. These kids are really little. There's 8 of us, boys and girls, and they would take us out one by one in front of all the other kids and systematically abuse us. And we could see everything that was going on. And the intent was to create trauma in this situation.
Yeah.
And there was one little boy that was just completely unprepared for this situation. I don't know how much. I couldn't even talk to him because he was completely inconsolable. And he was just sort of like pacing and walking in a circle, crying out, but not like super loudly, and just like mumbling and making incoherent sounds. And it was almost like he'd had some kind of psychotic break. I don't know if children that young are capable of having a psychotic break, but he'd had a break of some sort. He was just so overwhelmed by that situation that they couldn't calm him down. And I tried to calm him. Oh, sorry, he couldn't be calmed down. They were trying to fucking calm him down. They didn't give a shit. Excuse my language, sorry. So I went over to him and I tried to calm him down and tried to catch his attention outside of the awareness of the brothers. But we're literally in a pen.
Yeah.
That you can see everything. They can see a bunch of little kids. They can see what I'm doing. They know what I'm like. And as a result of that, they just proceeded to make a massive example out of that. And they also killed him. And they said, this is your fault. It's your fault that he's killed. It's because of what you did. And that for me is something that really upset me and really hurt me. I didn't really have the comprehension at that age to truly understand my place in the situation. But that was something that affected me. So that was just 2 incidents from this particular business. And I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to know about this business, but that was what I was just going to touch on for the particular business. Gabs, I don't know when you wanted me to mention the fact that I had reported them. Is that something we should do now or later?
Totally up to you. Maybe,
Yeah.
I think maybe now would sort of
Okay.
explain. You've covered the business so well.
Okay, cool. So in late 2020, basically I cracked the shits. I had enough. And I actually walked past and saw a couple of the brothers. One of them was driving a sports car. It pissed me off.
Yeah, going on with life like it's normal. It would.
Exactly. Yes. And I just thought to myself, you know, just like, it was just like very clear to me that it wasn't just that there'd been no consequences, is that the business has actually been doing better and better and better. It's actually like they've gained a lot more money. And for me, I thought, you don't actually deserve to be in that position. So for me, I can tend to be a little bit harsh and strict in regards to like who I feel deserves to be in certain points. But because I know how the cabal and the operation runs, there's certain people in positions of power that have to do more things than like a lower down criminal to like gain place within the hierarchy. And in my opinion, these people didn't deserve to be there. He's got these like low grade bogans who are feral disgusting. They don't even put on a bloody suit. Like they don't shower before they rape us. Like for me, I'm thinking to myself, like, that's just gross. You don't deserve to be where you are. And none of them do. But it was just for me, I just thought, you haven't gone to university and got an education and worked your ass off and earned that sports car. You've got it on the back of children.
Yeah.
And it just frustrated me and annoyed me. And the house was still there. The bandsaw was still going. For me, I couldn't really see that the business had actually changed or experienced any consequences whatsoever. And I'd been thinking about coming forward regarding a number of well-known figures and some of the trafficking operations that I'd been involved in, businesses that I'd been involved in as a child. Been thinking about it for some time because I've got some health issues. And when you have the health issues that I have, you start really considering like what you want to do at the end of your life. And I thought, well, you know what, if I come forward and I'm killed, so be it at this point. That's a risk that I'm willing to take. If I had another 50, 60 years ahead of me, then I probably wouldn't have come forward. But that's not my situation. But who knows? Who knows? I may have come forward. I could have got pissed off knowing me. So I made the report to Crime Stoppers in late 2020. And I said that I named the business, I named the owner of the business, and I didn't name them, but I identified that it was the owner who was operating the child trafficking operation and the 2 sons that were involved. And I detailed the types of abuse that went on there. I detailed the fact that the house was used to keep women there, to have unregistered births, things like that that are easily traceable. Within a 2-week period of time, I believed that I didn't know what Crime Stoppers did with the information. So just to be clear, in Australia, Crime Stoppers is like an anonymous reporting service that we can do like online or by phone, I believe. And it's to the police, and then it's all of your details are protected and kept confidential.
Allegedly.
That's what I thought. Yes, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yes. Unless you piss off the big boys, which I did. So within a space of 2 weeks, they closed the business doors. So the doors closed, everything was shut down. I went past, there's no lights on, nothing's operating. And I'm thinking, oh, you know, the police are investigating it. You know, I've affected change. They're doing their jobs. Anyway, I kept going and checking because I just was, you know, even though it was like, I would just quickly go down, have a look and leave. and like obviously out of eyesight of the cameras. I'm not staring at the front entrance of the business. Anyway, yes. The one night one morning I went down and I noticed that the house had been demolished and had been demolished to the floor. And this had been done in a space of less than 24 hours.
Wow.
And then I started to grow concerned and get worried. And I thought, oh no, like maybe they got tipped off. Maybe it hasn't been investigated. Maybe they're covering up evidence. But before I could really, I was thinking about it for a few days, and I didn't go and make a report to police. I probably should have at this time. That's my mistake and my error, and I will take full responsibility for that. Then they started advertising for a new business, and they opened a new business, which was an animal business. So on the floors of the previous business. And so what happens when you mix animal DNA with human DNA, it makes identification of human DNA nearly impossible. And there goes all the evidence. Even with an elaborate, excellent cleanup, there will still, in all likelihood, be some DNA left at a crime scene, because we have a lot of technology available to us now. But if it is mixed and all construed, you don't know what the hell's going on. They can't make specific identifications and identify individual strains with any kind of accuracy. And it was at that point that I guess I got a bit upset, had a bit of a cry, and any remaining shred of faith that I had in our institutions, and I still did have some, because I was raised in a middle-class family, and I was still, despite all of my experiences, still had some of that socialization. And I still thought that they would do something. And I just lost faith in the institution, in that moment. It was a bit of a devastating kind of realization for me. And that was sort of it. It wasn't until late 2021, I started to have some food safety issues in my house. I started to get sick a few times from Uber Eats, food that I kept in my house. And then I had a rape in my own home of me. I was drugged and raped in my own home in late 2021. And the nature of that rape, it was very clear to me that that was a targeted attack. Like, no offense to myself, but I'm not really the kind of person that you just target for a random rape. And not in the kind of way that this was conducted. So not only it was then that I realized not only that had they covered up the operation, the business, destroyed all the evidence and covered it up, now my information had been leaked to the traffickers in all likelihood, and I'd become a target, and they were going to enact punitive measures on me and my life for coming forward, despite the fact that who knows how much it cost them to change the business and demolish one building. In the context of what they do, not that much money. Have a cry, boo-hoo, in my opinion. They experience no legal consequences for it. And yet still now, my life has been turned upside down, and I've just been subjected to a number of things. Do you
think that the rape you experienced in 2021 had anything to do with the fact that you sent the information through to, what was it, Crime Stop, you said?
Correct.
Do you think
I believe that my information leaked, that it's not a confidential service, that they probably can log anybody's IP address that sends that information. At the end of the day, the resources and money that they have far outweigh anything that I anticipated. And not only that, when I was involved in trafficking, it was like 20 years ago. The technology and the money that is involved in trafficking today far surpasses what it did back in my day. Sounding like an old person now. But I didn't anticipate that. I didn't know that. And it wasn't until I begun to get regularly, systematically targeted, and I'm targeted on a regular basis. I fundamentally believe that they are probably renting an apartment in my apartment complex because I have been subjected to a number of tortures and rapes trying to prevent me from coming forward, that have just continued and worsened as time has gone on. Like, I've delayed this interview on a number of occasions because of the threats and the tortures has been so bad. Yeah.
Well,
And
I'm so
Crime
happy.
Stoppers, yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say Crime Stoppers, just so people know that are overseas and haven't heard of it. We understand through so many survivors coming forward that Crime Stoppers in Australia, which is meant to be a place you can report crimes, is actually completely part of the network and feeds into obviously alerting the upper level of corruption within the police force, but also feeds back into the levels of I guess you could call them cult operations happening on the streets. So it's not a confidential service, and that's just, it's awful. Like, I mean, hearing your story about, you know, how you trusted and, you know, wanted to do the right thing and seek justice, and then this very system that is set up for people to report to is part of the network.
Well, I think it's one.
And I didn't know that, and I think, I apologize. Sorry.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't know that at the time, but then when I looked into like reporting trafficking, like even more serious trafficking operations, like it's literally like anonymous reporting services or services that are all online. It's like very similar ways of reporting. I'm not going to ever report a trafficking operation through any kind of system like that ever again. And I'm certainly not going to go to the Australian Federal Police trafficking tip line and put that there. I mean,
where's it going? Yeah.
This is just proving to me more and more how we have to, as individuals, and, you know, we were talking with Bruce Shillingsworth yesterday and Rasul Snyman about being sovereign, you know, and really as individuals standing up, supporting each other and not relying on this corrupt system anymore. But Ash, I have a few questions, if you don't mind, just going back. And again, this is my curious nature, because I can't help but wonder, and I asked you this earlier on, where was your mom? And then after, obviously, you still had siblings after you, and you said at the time she wasn't aware. So part of the questioning I have, and I'm not sure if you can get all to it, but I'll say it anyway, was the satanic ritual abuse involved? When you were in this child trafficking ring as well, were you staying at home? Were you being trafficked all the time? Were you in a different location? Where was your mom? Where were the adults in your life?
Yes. Sorry, at this point in the story, we're only at, you know, I was only involved in this organization until I was 6. This is all before the age of 6. So at this point, I'm living with my family and my dad's just taking me there. That's it. You know, I might go for a couple of days at a time maximum, but that's it. I would just go for a day, a night. A lot of the abuse happened at night. And if it wasn't happening at the operation, it was happening at home. I rarely slept. I've had insomnia my entire life. I normally was raped between 4 to 6 times a night. Every single night, I would normally get about 2 or 3 hours worth of sleep if I wasn't involved in trafficking. My mum was just sleeping peacefully in her bed. Now, on a normal daily basis in that home, it was not a pleasant environment. My father is extremely controlling, violent. He's just a nightmare to be around, you know, and the house was living in a state of fear. My mum was in a state of fear. She was gaslit, but ultimately, no offense to her, but she was weak. And she failed to protect my siblings and I. She turned a blind eye to it. And as time went on, there was things that she saw that she chose to ignore. And to be honest, I don't even know if that's actually the worst thing in the world for her, because my father's so dangerous that he might have killed her. I don't know. He's killed a lot of people. That's the thing. But there's still no excuse for it. And my mother has always sort of not only turned a blind eye, but she's within, you know, she took on my mother and my siblings took on my father's beliefs. So whatever he believed, they in turn believed, and they projected those beliefs onto me and to my sister, onto each other. And such is the nature of a lot of children's experiences that go through this kind of abuse. You know, you just repress things and you can't cope with it and you just can't take it. So I remember one incident. I was quite old at this point. I remember I was 13 and I'd somehow disrespected allegedly my father at the dinner table by calling him out because he'd been discussing one of his legal cases. He's a lawyer. So he initially, after he got his law degree, he worked in the corporate sector. He worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, but he took me to PricewaterhouseCoopers offices one night and was caught by a cleaner raping me there. He was then proceeded to be fired, and they chose not to call the police. He convinced them that he was mentally ill. He's been on bipolar medication ever since, and I fundamentally believe that he doesn't have a mental illness, but he uses lithium to control his psychopathic urges and impulses, and it keeps him under control. Fairly effective strategy. It's quite good. So we had a number of years where he worked in a number of other sectors, shitty, crap, lowball jobs before getting back into government sector. But anyway, he was talking about, you know, kind of some privileged information at one point when I was 13. And I called him out on it and I said, look, Dad, you're not supposed to be saying those things. Like you're saying too much information, you know, because I'm a little expert, aren't I, on ethics and morals and appropriate.
It sounds like you were in your family.
But yes, he got up and chased me around the table, chased me down the hall. This is fairly regular, but this was a particularly bad incident. And lifted me up against the wall and was strangling me and raping me and said, say sorry, just screaming at me to say sorry. And I refused to say sorry, of course. And as I was starting to black out and seeing stars, I thought, oh, he might accidentally kill me. Better say sorry. So I alerted to him that I would say sorry. So he let go of my throat and he waited for me to say sorry. And I said, I'm not sorry and I never will be. And he proceeded to drag me into the bathroom and he beat me, he raped me, he shit on me, he pissed on me. And I woke up in a pool of my own blood and vomit. So this family was sitting at the dinner table. I didn't wake up because I was passed out. I don't know how long I was passed out for. But I woke up and I was really, really badly injured. I think something had happened to my tailbone. And I'm kind of an expert at dealing with pain. Pain's just not an issue for me, but I could barely get up. It took me about 45 minutes to get up off that floor, which is a very long time for me. The only other time this happened was when he shattered my tailbone because I, did my first skate trick and I showed the family and he was angry that I made progress. And that was the only other time that I couldn't physically walk and get up. And I just very, very slowly and gingerly climbed out the bathroom window quietly and limped down to the local park and just sat on a swing and cried for a couple of hours. And my family did nothing. Who knows what they were doing, just chilling. I'm sure they just finished their dinner and lived their life. But, children, they just dissociate and that's just how they cope with abuse. And if you see your sibling going through that level of abuse, you kind of just want to stay out of it, particularly when, for me, I was the eldest and I always felt that it was my responsibility to protect my siblings and always take the blame for everything because I could take it. I always knew I was different. And as a result of that, I tried to protect them. And I hope that I protected them in some small way, even though I will never ever get any credit for it. And I'm constantly blamed for things. It doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, when you're stronger than other people, it's important that you do your best by them. But anyway, when I came back to the house, I was locked out of the house for a couple of hours and finally I was let back in at around 9 o'clock and I crawled up to my bunk bed and I was in so much pain, like more than normal. And I I just thought, I don't even know if I can like go to school. Like I regularly went to school in extreme pain, but this was just like on another level. And my dad, I'm only calling him my dad. I don't normally say my dad. I normally say his name, but I'll just leave it for now. He came up there and I said to him, if you get into that bed and you rape me tonight, I'm going to kill you in your sleep. And he saw that I was serious, and he backed down and he left. And, you know, I often think about that moment, and I often think to myself, I really kind of wish that he had raped me, because it probably would have saved a lot of trouble that is insured in my life in the future. But yeah, in terms of my family, you know, they've just been gaslit into silence, and that's okay. You know, every person and every survivor has their own journey, and they may come to terms with it. They may remember things, they may not. It remains to be seen, and that's for them to go through.
Wow.
It's a good perspective.
What an intense life you've lived. And I mean, I see we're out of time again, but I would definitely love to have you back again to continue your story.
I've just started. Oh no.
That's what I'm saying.
We'll have to follow up.
to do a beautiful follow-up, and as well as the solutions channel, because I think it's so important. I mean, you know, you're giving us detail about stuff that, as I said, you know, the word child transportation is more just like a blasé thing for a lot of people now. It's a word that's often used, but what that means to people that have been there, like yourself, and such horror of horrors. Wow, Ash. Thank God you're around. Thank God you're around.
I'm very blessed and I'm very lucky. And that's why I have the approach that I do to life, because when you see people being killed right in front of you, every single day is a gift. It is a blessing. And that's the way that I view it. And I'm so lucky to be here. And every day that I wake up, it's just a wonderful chance. It's a chance for hope, a chance to dream, a chance for happiness. And I'm very blessed and very lucky. And I will just go back to answering your question from before about the ritualistic abuse. At this operation and this organization, I was not subjected to satanic ritual abuse, because this was kind of a lower down operation. And we can discuss that later on about what I experienced later. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much. God bless you. Take care of you and all these amazing things, because, you know, when I hear stories such as yours now, I know I say that when I look at you, I just, wow, it's insane what you've been through. And thank you for sharing. That's all. Just thank you.
Thank you for listening. And I'm sorry for the upset that it's caused. I can see that you're upset, so I apologize.
No. Of course, it's never nice hearing these stories, but it's so important that this information has come out. And I think, you know, although we speak to a lot of child trafficking survivors and overcomers, I've never heard someone speak about it in the way that you have, with the detail and the understanding at the same time, you know, and also just breaking it down into different levels and stuff like that. We often see pictures of children in cages. You were one of those children, you know, and it's just so important to be able to hear from an emotional perspective, and then, you know, the emotionality, the connection, to connect with people and someone like you, because you bring the true essence of the story to life, which is very important. And if this is the thing that wakes people up, then so be it. So
thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And I really look forward to having you back. I mean, Gabs, it's got to be soon.
I think we'll do a follow-up next week.
You know what, the pressure that I'm under at the moment, it's
I know.
crazy. And, you know, because like the torture that I've been subjected to, a lot of the information is getting lost day by day. So it's better we get it out there sooner rather than later.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I look forward to that, and we will chat now and set it up. Also, and as I said, I would love to have you on the Solutions channel to talk about your perspective on that, because I think you have a very beautiful and very unique perspective on these psychopath pedophiles. You know, it's a whole different level of consciousness we're dealing with there, and super dangerous. But again, I do believe when we understand it, and as you say, you know, these people have never known love. They have come, no doubt they were born into
I never said that. I never said they've never known love. They've known a lot of love.
That's my perspective. That's my perspective.
Yeah.
I would imagine, because if someone is born into that system, like if I'm just thinking of the two brothers, for example, or the sons, yes, right?
The sons.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, so they know nothing else other than violence and cruelty and pain and suffering.
Absolutely.
It's the opposite of what we know. And
but again, it's very different from my father, who was just born evil. And so it's really important that people understand the full spectrum of perpetrators from beginning to end. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm really passionate about redistributive justice and treating everybody with human rights, upholding human rights, and giving people the opportunity to change. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that, Ash. Thank you so much once again. Wow, Gabs, thank you. What do you have to say as we end off today after hearing this? I mean, I know
there's so much more. Yeah, there's so much more. And
I caught my face. I caught my face like I was like, first I just picked my jaw off.
But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Ash, for your courage and your bravery, sharing your story. Like it's so inspiring when survivors are coming forward and, you know, sharing these really, you know, intimate and vulnerable truths. And we're doing it to change the world. We're doing it so that children don't have to live this life anymore. And as you can hear from Ash, what Ash is telling us, it's still happening today. You know, and no one is coming to fix this. It's up to us to start fixing the world around us. So yeah, I think you're just absolutely incredible, Ash, and I can't wait for everyone to hear the rest of your story as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabs. I appreciate it.
Okay, guys and girls, thank you so much for tuning again to Focus on Australia. Wow, way down under. What can I say? Thank you so much, Ash. That is like really crazy. And I appreciate your bravery and courage stepping forward, and really, really look forward to having you back on our show to share the rest of your story again. Really, really appreciate that. So guys and girls, if you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. As you know, our channel was struck. We're building up again. We're still hectically shadow banned. So please just get the message out there, share, share, share. This is really the stuff that people need to hear about. It's shocking, but we've been complying for long enough with this. And, you know, if 1,000 people had to surround this business and demand, for example, that we go in and see what's going on type thing, you know, it would be shedding light on that. And it's not the cops doing that. I'm just using that as an example. It would be individual people saying, we've had enough of you nasties in our community, out with you, you know, and shed light on that and get systems that are not corrupt in place. That's what we've got to work towards now. Ultimately, we all have to do that. All of us have to do that, is we have to stand up, protect our children. This is horrific. The betrayal of what I was hearing here today as well. It's crazy. Anyway, God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves, and we'll catch you very soon. Take it easy. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.